Future of money. Pull that banknote out of your pocket. Go on, if you still carry such things. Feel it. That flimsy piece of paper or polymer is one of the most powerful spells ever cast. Come closer to the fire. Let the shadows dance a little. I'm here to untangle the knots of these great sprawling stories that we call knowledge. I'll give you the marrow, the crucial parts you need to navigate the world, to hold your own in conversations that matter, to see the architecture of power hiding behind the wallpaper of daily life. You, yes, you, where are you listening to this? Are you on a crowded train, a quiet road at midnight, or in the sanctuary of your own room? I want you to picture the space around you, because we're about to dissolve it. We're going on a journey through corridors of thought most people never even know exist. Let's start with that money in your hand. What is it? You'll say it's $1, a euro, a pound. But what is that? It's a promise. It's a ghost. It's a shared hallucination. Money, you see, isn't a thing. It's a story. And it might just be the most successful story ever told, more pervasive than any religion, more potent than any empire's flag. It's the only story that almost every human on the planet believes. Why? Because everyone else believes it. It's the ultimate group project, and most of us never even read the instructions. We think of money as coins, as gold. Something solid, something you can bite to see if it's real. That's a comforting thought, isn't it? That value is heavy and shiny. For millennia, societies anchored their belief in this story to physical objects. Gold was the original influencer. It had no real purpose. You couldn't eat it or build a house with it, but my God, it was beautiful. It was rare. And most importantly, it was chemically lazy. It didn't rust or tarnish. It just endured. So we all agreed this shiny, useless metal would be our symbol for value. The Sun King, Louis XIV, didn't build Versailles with gold bricks. He built it by convincing enough people that the gold in his vault meant something, that it could be exchanged for a lifetime of stone, sweat, and artistry. A king, an emperor, a government, they aren't just rulers, they are master storytellers, and their central bank is their publishing house. But what if the story isn't about the object at all? What if it's purely about the belief itself? In medieval Russia and Finland, a common currency wasn't a coin, it was a squirrel pelt. A fixed number of squirrel pelts could buy you a cow. Think about that. Little bundles of fur. A currency that could literally get moth-eaten. It worked because the community agreed it worked. They had faith in the fur. I remember a time when I stumbled upon a scroll that wasn't supposed to exist. It was in a hidden alcove in the great library of Alexandria, long before the famous fires. You have to imagine the scene. The air was thick with the scent of papyrus, cedar oil, and the faint, dry dust of ages. I wasn't supposed to be in that section. It was reserved for texts on celestial mechanics and statecraft, the kind of knowledge the Ptolemies liked to keep to themselves. I was tracing the cool stone of a wall, feeling for a draft, a sign of a hidden space, a librarian's trick as old as libraries themselves. My fingers found a loose block, and with a soft grate, it swung inwards, revealing a small, dark chamber. Inside, there was a single scroll, sealed not with wax, but with a thin lead strip. It felt cold and heavy, forbidden. Its title, when I finally unrolled the crackling papyrus, was On the Nature of Tribute. It wasn't written by a famous philosopher, but by a disgruntled treasury official named Crichton. He had served under one of the early pharaohs, long before Alexander's generals arrived. Crichton's argument was so dangerous, so utterly heretical, that I understood immediately why it was bricked up behind a wall. He argued that the pharaoh's power didn't come from the gold in his treasury. Everyone believed it did. The weight of gold was the weight of the kingdom. But Crichton said no. He wrote, "The farmer does not accept gold for his grain because the gold itself has value. He accepts it because he believes the pharaoh's tax collector will, in turn, accept it from him. Its value is not in the metal, but in the pharaoh's decree. We have mistaken the symbol for the substance." He was saying that money was a technology of power, a tool for moving resources, backed by nothing more than the authority of the state and the collective faith of its people. The gold was just a stage prop, a bit of theater to make the story more convincing. He had discovered the secret of fiat money 2,000 years before it had a name. Reading his words, I could feel the ground shift beneath my feet. It was like discovering the architect's blueprints for the Matrix. I sat there in that dusty darkness, the scroll trembling in my hands, realizing that this man had been silenced, not for blasphemy against the gods, but for a far greater sin. He had revealed how the magic trick worked. He had told the audience the secret behind the illusion, and for that, his words had to be buried. That's the core of it, you see. Our entire global economic system, that thing of terrifying complexity that fuels our lives and our wars, is built on the same principle as Crichton's papyrus and the Russian squirrel pelt. That dollar bill has value because a powerful storyteller, the US government, says it does, and because we all collectively agree to believe them. When you tap your card to buy a coffee, what story are you telling yourself in that moment? You're not just exchanging data. You're reaffirming your faith in one of the most powerful narratives ever conceived. This creates a deep psychological need for stability. We crave for the story to remain consistent. We need to believe that the fiver in our pocket today will buy roughly the same amount of bread tomorrow. This is why inflation is so terrifying on a primal level. It's not just about prices going up. It's about the story falling apart. It's a bad rewrite by the author, and suddenly the plot doesn't make sense anymore. Your trust in the entire system begins to fray. And here we stand now, at a fascinating, terrifying crossroads. For the first time in millennia, new storytellers have emerged from the shadows. They're not kings or governments. They are anonymous, decentralized, and they have a new story to tell. It's a story written in code, on a ledger that no one owns and everyone can see. They are proposing a new kind of money, one that isn't backed by the authority of a pharaoh or a president, but by the cold, hard logic of mathematics. They are whispering the same heresy as Crichton, that the old story is just that, a story, and that it's time to write a new one. This is the stage for the battle over crypto, over digital currencies, over the very future of what it means to exchange value. It's a war of narratives, and it's not happening in some distant future. It's happening now. The opening chapters are being written in every tap of your card, every online purchase, every curious search for the word Bitcoin. Before we venture further into that wild territory, just sit with this for a moment. The very concept of wealth, of poverty, of debt, of investment, it's all built on this shared dream. We've built skyscrapers on it, fought wars over it, and organized our entire civilization around it. It's a magnificent, fragile, and utterly human creation, and it's starting to change. The question is, are you ready for the next chapter? Because the ink is still wet, and the story is far from over. So, we left off with this unsettling idea, didn't we? That the money in your pocket, the numbers in your bank account, are all just chapters in a story we've agreed to believe. A story of power, of promises, whispered from governments to banks to you. But what a fragile thing belief can be. It needs reinforcement, ritual. It needs theater. For most of history, that theater involves something you could touch, something heavy, gold, silver, even squirrel pelts. The sheer physical reality of the object helped anchor the story. But what if you took that to its logical and, perhaps illogical, extreme? What if the money was so real, so overwhelmingly physical, that you couldn't even move it? Come with me. We need to leave the dusty libraries behind for a moment. Feel the salt spray on your face, the warm, damp air of the Pacific. We're sailing to a small cluster of islands called Yap, out in Micronesia. For centuries, the people here had one of the most fascinating, and frankly, one of the most illuminating monetary systems ever devised by humankind. They used giant, solid stone wheels, carved from limestone, with a hole in the middle. They called them Rai. And when I say giant, I don't mean dinner plate sized. The largest are over 12 feet in diameter and weigh more than a truck. They had to be quarried on another island, Palau, hundreds of miles away, across treacherous seas, and brought back on canoes and rafts. The sheer effort, the danger involved in creating and transporting a single Rai stone, that was the point. It was the original proof of work. The value of a stone was not just in its size, but in its story. How many men died on the journey to bring it home? Was it commissioned by a famous chief? Did a storm nearly claim it? Each stone had a pedigree, a history, a soul. It was a monument to human effort. Now, you're probably thinking, how on earth do you buy a fish dinner with a 4-ton rock? You don't. Making change must have been a nightmare. Keep the coconuts. You can owe me the corner of my house-sized coin. No, the brilliant, mind-bending part is that the stones almost never moved. When a piece of property was sold or a dowry was paid, the ownership of the stone or even just a fraction of the ownership would transfer. The stone itself would remain exactly where it was, perhaps leaning against the former owner's house for decades. The entire island population just kept a running tally in their heads. They all knew that the big stone by the shoreline no longer belonged to the fisherman's family, but now belonged to the weaver's clan. The physical object was just a marker, a focal point for a shared mental ledger. The island itself, the collective consciousness of the village, was the bank. It was a gossip-powered blockchain. This is where the story gets truly strange and truly profound. Imagine a small fleet of Yapese men on the final exhausting leg of their journey home from the quarrying island of Palau. They have a magnificent new rise stone on their raft, one of the largest ever carved, destined for a powerful chief. The sea, which has been their enemy for weeks, decides to have one last laugh. A vicious squall hits them. The waves climb, the winds howl, and despite the crew's desperate efforts, the raft splinters and their precious stone, the product of so much sweat and fear, plunges into the abyss, sinking to the lightless bottom of the Pacific. The men, heartbroken, eventually make it back to Yap. They go before the village elders and tell their tale of woe. They have nothing to show for their journey but their own survival. They have lost the stone. Now, in our world, that would be the end of it. A lost shipment of gold is just gone. The value vanishes with the metal. But that's not what happened on Yap. After much discussion, the elders and the villagers came to a remarkable consensus. Everyone had heard the story of the stone's creation. Everyone knew of the perilous journey. The men who survived were witnesses to its existence and its tragic loss. So, they decided. The stone was still good. It was still perfectly valid currency. Somewhere, miles out to sea, thousands of feet beneath the waves, a massive stone wheel sat in the silent dark, and on the island of Yap, it continued to be exchanged for goods and services. Its ownership could be transferred. It could be used in transactions, all without ever being seen again, because the value, you see, was never in the stone itself. It was in the shared agreement, the universally accepted story. The physical object had become entirely conceptual. It was the world's first successful offshore account. Does that not send a shiver down your spine? How is that fundamentally different from the number in your digital bank account? Have you ever seen the physical money your balance represents? Have you visited the vault? Of course not. You just see a number on a screen. You trust the bank's ledger. The APs trusted their collective memory. The sunken rise stone proves that money is not a physical thing, but a system of accounting. It's just a set of entries in a ledger, a record of debts and credits and ownership. The only thing that matters is that everyone agrees on the ledger and trusts that it won't be tampered with. This gets at something deep in our psychology. We are not wired to think about abstract value. We are wired to think about other people. We track status, we track favors, we track reputation. Who owes whom? Who is trustworthy? Who is a cheat? The rise stones, sitting immovably in the village, were giant, public declarations of wealth and obligation. You couldn't hide them. Everyone knew your business. In such a small, high-trust society, this system worked perfectly. The community itself was the guarantor of the transaction. There was no need for a central bank or armed guards, because the cost of cheating being ostracized from the tribe was a fate worse than death. We, in our massive, anonymous, low-trust, global society, can't rely on shared memory. We can't all gather under a tree and agree on who owns what. So we created institutions, banks, governments, to act as the keepers of our ledger. We trust them to keep the record straight. We pay them handsomely for the service. We build giant, intimidating marble buildings to house them. Another bit of theater to make their story of trustworthiness feel solid and real. For centuries, this has been the only solution to the problem of transacting with strangers. Until now, because that anonymous storyteller I mentioned at the end of our last talk, the one who emerged from the shadows, they took this idea, the Yapes idea of a shared ledger, and they asked a revolutionary question. What if we could create a ledger that wasn't held in the collective memory of a village or on the private server of a bank, but was held by everyone? A ledger that was public, that was distributed across thousands of computers, that was secured not by social pressure or by marble columns, but by pure, unadulterated mathematics. What if we could create a digital rise stone? One that couldn't be sunk, couldn't be hidden, couldn't be owned by any single entity. A ledger for the whole world. That question, that single spark of an idea, is what led to the invention of Bitcoin. It wasn't about creating a new way to get rich quick, not at its core. It was about solving the ancient problem of trust. It was about creating a system of value that didn't require you to believe in a king, a president, or a banker. You only had to believe in the math. It was a direct challenge to the storytellers. A new book, written in a new language, for a new kind of world. And just like Crichton's Forbidden Scroll in Alexandria, it's a text that has the power to change everything. We've seen that money is a story, a ledger. First, it was a story told by a king, written on gold. Then, a ledger held in the memory of a village, marked by giant stones. Both systems required trust. You had to trust the king not to devalue his coins. You had to trust your neighbors to remember who owned what. For millennia, those were the only options. Trust in powerful institutions, or trust in your immediate community. But what happens when the powerful institutions break that trust? What happens when the kings, the high priests of finance, are revealed to be not infallible guardians, but gamblers who have lost the kingdom's money? Cast your mind back. It doesn't require a journey to ancient Alexandria or a forgotten Pacific island. Just a short trip to 2008. Remember the feeling in the air? The quiet panic, the sheer disbelief. The names on the news, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, sounded like ancient, indestructible pillars of a grand temple. And one by one, we watched them crumble into dust. We saw lines of people outside banks, not to deposit money, but to pull out what little they had left. We saw headlines of bailouts, of taxpayer money being funneled into the very machines that had failed so spectacularly. There was this profound sense of betrayal. The story we had all been told that the people in charge knew what they were doing, that the system was fundamentally sound, was revealed to be a fiction. The high priests had been caught desecrating their own altar, and into this void of trust, into this wreckage of the old narrative, a single document appeared, quietly, without fanfare. It wasn't a proclamation from a government or a press release from a corporation. It was an email sent on Halloween of 2008 to a small, obscure mailing list of cryptographers and cypherpunks, digital rebels, and privacy advocates. The email was from a name no one had ever heard before, Satoshi Nakamoto. The subject line was simple: Bitcoin P2P e-cash paper. Imagine this scene with me. We don't know who Satoshi was or where they were. Maybe it was a single brilliant programmer in a dimly lit room, the glow of the monitor reflecting in their glasses. Maybe it was a collective of thinkers scattered across the globe, coordinating in secret. But picture the moment. The world outside is consumed by the fire of the financial crisis. Pundits are shouting on television, politicians are scrambling, and ordinary people are watching their life savings evaporate. In the midst of this global pandemonium, this person, this ghost, calmly attaches a 9-page PDF file to an email and clicks send. That single click was an act of profound intellectual rebellion. It was the digital equivalent of Martin Luther nailing his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Church. He wasn't just pointing out a flaw. He was challenging the entire authority of the institution. Satoshi's paper was a work of heretical genius. It was dense, it was technical, and it was not exactly beach reading. but its core message was as sharp and clear as a shard of glass. The paper, titled Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, proposed a solution to the problem of trust. It said, in essence, we cannot trust kings, and we cannot trust bankers. Their human greed, their fallibility, will always lead to corruption and crisis. Our global village is now too large and anonymous to trust our neighbors like the people of Yap did. So, we must stop placing our trust in people and start placing it in something else, something incorruptible, mathematics. Satoshi had built on decades of work by other cryptographers to solve a problem they called the double spending problem. Without a central authority like a bank, how do you stop someone from spending the same digital dollar twice? Satoshi's solution was the blockchain, a public ledger, a shared book of accounts, just like the one held in the collective mind of the Yapese. But this ledger wasn't maintained by gossip and memory. It was maintained by a network of computers, all competing to solve complex mathematical puzzles. The math itself would ensure the integrity of the ledger. It proposed a system with a fixed set of rules, transparent to all, that no single person, government, or bank could ever change. If you could create a new form of money from scratch, what rules would you build into it? Satoshi decided on a few key ones. A finite supply, so it couldn't be endlessly inflated like government money. A predictable issuance schedule, and a network that anyone could join and verify for themselves. No more closed doors, no more secret dealings. A fair game. This was the psychological genius of Bitcoin's timing. It offered a life raft of order and predictability in an ocean of institutional chaos. Of course, for a long time, almost no one noticed. The idea was too strange, too radical. For the first year, Satoshi was practically the only person running the network, a lonely prophet in the digital wilderness. The first real-world transaction didn't happen until 2010. A programmer in Florida named Laszlo Hanyecz, an early Bitcoin enthusiast, wanted to prove it could be used for something other than a hobby. He posted on a forum offering 10 Bitcoins to anyone who would order him 2 pizzas. Someone in England took him up on the offer, called a Papa John's in Jacksonville, and had the pizzas delivered. 10,000 Bitcoins for 2 large pizzas. I hope, for his sake, they had extra cheese. That meal is now, without a doubt, the most expensive in human history. It stands as a slightly ridiculous monument to the chasm between an idea's humble beginnings and its world-shaking potential. And then, just as mysteriously as he appeared, Satoshi Nakamoto vanished. In 2011, after corresponding with a few other developers who had taken up the cause, he sent his last known email and was never heard from again. He created a new global currency, sparked a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and then just ghosted everyone. It's the ultimate mic drop. Like the anonymous authors of ancient epics or religious texts, the identity became secondary to the power of the text itself. The movement was now truly decentralized. It had no leader. It had only the book, the white paper. So here we are. We've journeyed through 3 fundamental ideas of what money can be. First, there's the pharaoh's money. It's hierarchical. Value is decreed from the top down. Its strength is its efficiency, but its weakness is its reliance on the wisdom and integrity of the ruler. Trust the institution. Second, there's the Yapese money. It's communal. Value is maintained by a high-trust, tight-knit community. Its strength is its social cohesion, but it cannot scale to a global level. Trust your neighbor. And now, this third strange new thing. Satoshi's money. It's algorithmic. Value is secured by a decentralized network governed by mathematical rules. Its strength is its resistance to censorship and corruption, but its weakness, well, its weaknesses are what we are still discovering. Trust the code. This is the end of our first journey together. The exploration of What Money Island, we've uncovered that it's not a thing, but a story, a ledger, a system of trust. And the creation of Bitcoin was not just a technological invention. It was the publication of a new rival story, a heretic's ledger. It lit a fire, and that fire is now spreading. It's forcing us to ask questions we haven't had to ask for centuries. But now that we have this strange new book in our hands, we have to learn how to read its language. What exactly is this alchemist's code that powers it all? So, you're holding this heretic's book, this Bitcoin white paper. It promises a new kind of money, a new story of value, built not on the whims of kings, but on the bedrock of mathematics. It sounds like magic, and in a way, it island all-powerful technology, when you don't understand it, feels like magic. So let's you and I become magicians for a while. Let's learn the secret to the trick. Let's open the book and learn to read this alchemist's code. The core of it, the engine that powers Bitcoin and all the thousands of cryptocurrencies that followed, is a technology called the blockchain. Forget the jargon for a moment. At its heart, it's a very simple idea. Imagine we have a special notebook. This notebook is open for everyone in the world to see, and thousands of copies of it exist simultaneously. It's like a group project where you can't trust anyone, so you make 0 copies of the homework and give one to every student in the school to keep an eye on things. Every time someone wants to make a transaction, say, you want to send me one of these new digital coins, you announce it to everyone. I'm sending 1 coin to the Guardian. You shout it into the digital town square. Now, a group of people, we'll call them miners, think of them as competitive librarians, gather up your announcement and a bunch of others that have been made recently. They bundle them all together onto a new page for our notebook. This page is called a block. This is where the first bit of alchemy comes in. To add this new page to the notebook, a miner has to do some work. They have to solve an incredibly difficult, completely arbitrary mathematical puzzle. It's like the universe is asking you to solve a Sudoku puzzle the size of a planet. It takes a colossal amount of computer power. Why? It's a feature, not a bug. It makes it expensive and time-consuming to add a new page, which prevents people from spamming the network with fake transactions or trying to rewrite history. The first miner to solve the puzzle gets to add their page to the chain and, as a reward for their effort, is granted a few brand new coins. This is how new Bitcoins are created, or mined. Once the puzzle is solved, the new page is added to the end of the notebook. And here is the second and most beautiful piece of magic. Every new page is cryptographically linked to the one before it. To understand this, let's leave the digital world and step into a medieval scriptorium. Imagine a monastery that keeps all the town's most important records, deeds, debts, inheritances. The ledger is their sacred trust. But the abbot is worried. A powerful, corrupt duke might try to bribe or threaten a young scribe to go back and secretly change a record from a few years ago to erase a debt or change a property line. So the abbot devises a system. When a scribe, let's call him Brother Thomas, finishes a new page of the ledger for the day, he must perform a special ritual. He takes the finished page of text and, using a secret formula known only to the monks, a kind of alchemical incantation, he distills the entire page of writing down into a single, unique line of seemingly random letters and numbers, a signature. Think of it as the data's unique fingerprint. He then writes this signature at the top of the next page he begins working on. So, page 2 contains the unique signature of page 1. Page 3 contains the unique signature of page 2, and so on, creating an unbreakable chain. One day, the corrupt duke's men storm into the scriptorium. They put a knife to Brother Thomas's throat and command him to change a single word on a page from 3 years ago, changing a debt of 1,000 gold florins to 100. Thomas, terrified, does as he's told. He carefully scratches away the ink and makes the change. But then the Duke tells him to distill the page again to create the same signature to hide his crime. "I cannot, my lord," Thomas whispers. He explains that the formula is so sensitive that changing even a single speck of ink on the page will produce a completely different signature. The new signature for the altered page will no longer match the one written at the top of the page that follows it. And that mismatch will mean its signature is now wrong, which won't match the next page, and so on. The fraud would create a cascade of broken links, a trail of evidence that would be obvious to anyone who inspected the book. To change one word in the past, the Duke wouldn't just have to rewrite that page. He'd have to rewrite every single page that came after it. All while the other monks were busy adding new pages to the real book. The forgery is mathematically impossible to hide. That is a blockchain. That signature is what we call a cryptographic hash, and the sensitivity is no exaggeration. You could take the entire text of Moby Dick, run it through the algorithm SHA-256 if you want the incantation's name, and get a unique hash, a string of 64 characters. If you go back and change a single letter in the bookmaking whale a capital whale and run it again, the new hash will be completely unrecognizably different. Now, imagine this monk's ledger is not in one monastery, but copied and held by thousands of monasteries all around the world, all updated in real time. If the Duke wanted to change the past, he wouldn't just have to rewrite hundreds of pages in one book. He'd have to simultaneously break into thousands of monasteries and perform the exact same rewrite on more than half of all the copies before the next page was added. It's a security model based on radical transparency. The ledger is secure because everyone is watching. This brings us to a profound philosophical shift. For all of human history, our world has been defined by things you can copy. You can print 1 million copies of a book. You can copy a digital photo, a song, a movie, an infinite number of times for free. The internet is a giant, glorious copying machine. This is why digital ownership has always been a thorny problem. But what the blockchain does is create, for the first time, a truly unique, verifiable digital object. It creates digital scarcity. I can prove without any doubt that I own this specific coin and that I have sent it to you, and now you are the sole owner. It's a system built on a deep, almost beautiful cynicism about human nature. It doesn't ask you to trust me. It doesn't ask you to trust the miners. It doesn't ask you to trust anyone at all. The entire point is that you don't have to. You only have to trust the code and the math. The system works because it assumes everyone might be a bad actor, and it makes cheating so computationally expensive that it's more profitable to just play by the rules. It's a trust machine for a trustless world, and the implications ripple far beyond money. Think about it. If you had a book that could never be erased or altered, a permanent record for all of humanity, what truths would you want to write in it? Property titles? Legal contracts? Your vote in an election? Your very identity? This is the alchemist's code. It's a way of turning data into a unique, immutable, golden-like substance. It's an architecture for a new kind of truth, but it's also just a tool. And like any powerful tool, from the printing press to the atom bomb, its ultimate impact depends entirely on the humans who wield it. And humans, when faced with something new and valuable that they don't fully understand, have a tendency to do some very strange, very predictable things. They have a tendency to lose their minds. So we have this beautiful, elegant machine, this alchemist's code, a ledger of perfect integrity, secured by mathematics, a trust machine for a trustless world. It's a tool of pristine logic. And then we handed it to humans. And as I said, when humans get their hands on a powerful new tool that promises to mint gold from thin air, we tend to go a little mad. The story of cryptocurrency isn't just the story of a technology. It's the story of a series of wild, feverish digital gold rushes. It's a story of booms and busts, of overnight millionaires and spectacular flameouts. And if you think this is a new phenomenon, a unique madness of our digital age, then you haven't been spending enough time in the older wings of my library. Human Psychology is the one book whose text never changes, only the illustrations. Let me pull a volume from the shelf. It's bound in old leather, and it smells faintly of canal water and dried flowers. The title is The Great Tulip Mania. Come with me to Amsterdam in the 1630s. It's the trading hub of the world, a city buzzing with new money, new ideas, and a frantic energy. Ships flood its ports daily, laden with silks from the East and silver from the Americas. Anything feels possible. And into this bustling city comes a new kind of luxury good, the tulip. Not the simple red and yellow ones you see in gardens today. These were exotic, rare, brought from the far-off Ottoman Empire. And some of them were special. They would bloom with incredible, intricate patterns, feathered streaks of vibrant color, like flames licking up the petals. We know now this was the result of a virus the tulip-breaking virus that was slowly killing the bulb while producing these stunning, unpredictable patterns. The sicker the flower, the more beautiful and rare it became. The perfect metaphor, don't you think? At first, they were just a hobby for wealthy botanists. But then something shifted in the collective mind of the city. The tulips, particularly the rarest bulbs, stopped being just flowers. They became assets. They became a story of quick, effortless wealth. Let's imagine a man, a weaver named Jan, a sensible man who has always believed in the value of hard work. He hears the whispers at first in the marketplace. A friend, a brewer, boasts of selling a single bulb for the price of a fat pig. Jan scoffs. Madness. But a week later, he hears the brewer sold another for the price of a carriage. The whispers grow louder, turning into excited chatter in the city's taverns. Soon, it's all anyone talks about. Prices aren't just rising, they are exploding. Weavers, bakers, blacksmiths, people who couldn't tell a petal from a leaf are quitting their jobs to become full-time bulb traders. Jan holds out. He trusts his loom, the solid weight of the cloth he produces. But every day, he sees his neighbors buying new clothes, celebrating with expensive wine. His own brother-in-law, a man Jan has always considered a fool, trades the family cow for a bulb called the Viceroy. Jan is furious at his sister. He tells her they've traded their livelihood for a glorified onion. 3 weeks later, the brother-in-law sells the Viceroy bulb for enough money to buy a small house. The feeling in Jan's gut is no longer smugness. It's a sick, twisting cocktail of envy and panic. The world he understood, a world of tangible value and steady work, seems to be dissolving around him. He is being left behind. The fear of missing out, that cold dread of watching others ascend while you remain stuck on the ground, finally breaks him. He sells his loom, the source of his pride and his family's security, and with the money he buys a single, prized bulb. A Semper Augustus, the king of tulips, valued at its peak at over 50 guilders, more than the grandest mansion on the canal. He doesn't even take possession of the bulb. He just has a piece of paper, a contract. But it feels like holding the sundae. He is no longer Jan the weaver. He is Jan, the investor. He is part of the future. He sleeps for the first time in months, dreaming of the even greater fortune he will have tomorrow. Because that's the logic of a bubble. It's not about the flower, it's about the next person in line. The greater fool theory. The price is irrelevant as long as you believe there's someone else, a greater fool, willing to pay more tomorrow. It's a thrilling, dizzying game of musical chairs. And then, one cold day in February 1637, the music stops. No one knows exactly why. Maybe a big auction in Harlem fails to attract buyers. Maybe a single influential botanist cashes out. But a tremor of doubt runs through the market. A few people decide to sell. The price dips, just a little. But that dip is enough to shatter the spell. The panic spreads faster than the fever did. Everyone is rushing to sell, and suddenly, there are no buyers. The story of infinite wealth vanishes overnight, replaced by the cold, hard reality of what these things actually are: flower bulbs. Jan's piece of paper, his key to a new life, is now worth less than a common turnip. His loom is gone. His future is gone. All that remains is the silence, the deafening silence of a city in ruin. Now, does any of this sound familiar? Have you ever bought something, a stock, a token, not for its utility but purely in the hope that you could sell it to someone else for more? The language changes, but the song remains the same. The 17th century tavern is now a Reddit forum or a Telegram channel. The hastily printed pamphlets boasting of new tulip varieties are now slick websites and 20-page white papers for a new coin, often 90% hope and 10% buzzwords. The frantic cry of Semper Augustus is now to the moon or diamond hands. It is the exact same social contagion, the same projection of infinite hope onto a scarce, poorly understood asset. It's a massively multiplayer online game where the only objective is to not be the last one holding the bag. The crypto world has seen this cycle repeat itself again and again. The boom of 2017, the crash of 2018, the wild bull run of 2021, and the brutal crypto winter that followed. Each time, fortunes are made and lost in the blink of an eye. Each time, a new crop of Jans gets pulled into the fever dream, convinced that this time is different. So, is that all this is? Is this elegant, world-changing technology, this trust machine, doomed to be nothing more than a casino for digital tulips? A playground for speculators engaged in a generational game of greater fool? That is the question that haunts this entire space. It's the ghost at the banquet. Because beneath the froth, beneath the memes and the madness, the machine itself keeps running. The blockchain keeps adding blocks. The transactions keep getting verified. The core idea, a decentralized, incorruptible ledger, endures the boom and bust of human emotion. The technology and the market are two very different things, tangled together like a beautiful flower and the virus that gives it its color. The real question is, what is being built during the quiet times? When the tourists and the fools go home, who is left? The people who believed in the tulip as a flower, or the people who believed in the blockchain as a new kind of architecture? Because during the quiet, sober moments of the crash, new figures emerge from the shadows, not just speculators, but builders, and they are creating something far more solid than the price of a token. They are building new structures of power. And unlike the price on an exchange, those are not so easy to see. When the fever of the digital tulip breaks, and the tourists go home with their pockets turned inside out, the machine keeps running. The blockchain keeps adding its blocks, indifferent to the madness. And the people who remain, the builders, are not just playing a market. They are laying the foundations of a new kind of world. The promise, whispered in Satoshi's white paper, was a world with no rulers, a flat, decentralized plane where everyone was a peer. A beautiful idea, an elegant heresy. But power is a stubborn thing. It's like a ghost that, when exorcised from a castle, simply takes up residence in the village church. It abhors a vacuum. And in the years since Bitcoin's creation, as this new digital territory has been mapped and settled, we've seen new castles being built, new thrones being carved. The promise was decentralization. The reality is far more complicated. We have simply traded one set of puppet masters for another. Let's start with the miners, those competitive librarians keeping the network secure. In the early days, anyone with a decent computer could be a miner, could participate in validating the network, and have a chance at earning new coins. It was a truly democratic vision. But remember that mathematical puzzle they have to solve? Over time, it gets harder and harder by design. Soon, a home computer wasn't enough. You needed specialized, powerful hardware, giant warehouses full of these machines, burning colossal amounts of electricity. This created economies of scale. The bigger your mining operation, the more likely you were to solve the puzzle and get the reward. So what did the little guys do? They banded together. They formed mining pools, which are a bit like miners' unions. Thousands of individual miners pool their computing power and agree to share any rewards they find. It's a sensible strategy. It's like trying to win the lottery by yourself versus buying tickets with your entire office. You have a much better chance of winning together. But in solving one problem, they created another. They gave enormous power to the pool operator, the union boss. The operator controls the combined computational power of the entire group. And in June of 2014, the community held its breath as a single one of these pools, a company called GHash.io, grew larger and larger and larger. You have to understand the terror this caused. The entire security of Bitcoin rests on one assumption, that no single entity controls more than 50% of the network's computing power. If they do, they can, in theory, pull off a 51% attack. They could block transactions, potentially reverse their own payments, and bring the entire system to a grinding halt. They could, like the corrupt duke in our monastery, begin to rewrite the sacred ledger. It was the system's apocalypse scenario, and for a few harrowing hours, GHash.io's slice of the global network hash rate ticked up 45%, 48%, 49.7%. It flirted with the line. The forums and chat rooms were ablaze with panic and philosophical debate. Was this the end? Was the great experiment a failure? The thing that was supposed to replace our trust in fallible humans was now completely at the mercy of the intentions of a single, anonymous group of them. The irony was suffocating. In the end, the crisis was averted. Whether through a genuine commitment to the decentralized ideal or simply out of fear of destroying the value of their own investment, Gehash.io voluntarily promised to reduce its share, and individual miners, spooked, began pointing their hardware to other pools. The system survived, but it had a near-death experience. It revealed a deep crack in the foundation. The trust the code mantra was shown to be incomplete. You also had to trust the humans running it not to collude. So, the miners are one new center of power. The second, the exchanges. These are the marketplaces where you can buy and sell cryptocurrencies. They are the glittering new banks of the digital age, just with better websites and a more casual dress code. And they are staggeringly powerful. The original promise of crypto was be your own bank. You could hold your own coins in your own digital wallet, secured by your own private keys. It's a vision of radical self-sovereignty. But that also comes with radical personal responsibility. Being your own bank is great until you realize you're also your own hopelessly insecure, forgetful, and easily phished security guard. If you lose your keys, your money is gone, forever. There's no customer service number to call. Faced with this daunting reality, what do most people do? They take the easy route. They leave their coins on the exchange where they bought them. They choose the comfort of delegation over the burden of freedom. And in doing so, they make these centralized companies the custodians of trillions of dollars in assets. These exchanges are not decentralized. They are private companies with CEOs and servers and headquarters. They can freeze your account. They can be hacked. They can go bankrupt, taking all their customers' funds with them, as we've seen happen time and time again. They have become the very middlemen that Bitcoin was designed to eliminate. And finally, there are the puppet masters who need no official title at all. They are known, in the jargon of the space, as whales. These are the early adopters, the lucky, the shrewd, who accumulated vast fortunes of cryptocurrency when it was still practically worthless. Think of Laszlo Hanyecz, the pizza guy. If he had held on to just one of those pizzas worth of Bitcoin 50 coins, he'd be a whale of immense size. There are wallets, anonymous strings of characters on the blockchain that have held hundreds of thousands of coins for over a decade without moving a single one. Satoshi's own stash is the biggest of them all, a ghost ship carrying a city's worth of gold. These whales are the new dragons, hoarding mountains of digital treasure, and with a single transaction, a single twitch of their tail, they can send tidal waves through the market. When they sell, prices crash. When they buy, prices soar. They can manipulate the sentiment of millions of smaller investors. Their movements are tracked and analyzed with an almost religious fervor. The promise was a democracy of finance, but it has created a new, shadowy oligarchy. So, this is the landscape that has emerged from the dust of the first gold rush. It is not the flat, featureless plain of perfect decentralization. It's a new continent, with its own mountain ranges of power, its own deep water channels of influence, the miners who process the transactions, the exchanges that act as the gateways, and the whales who command the currents. This is the end of our second exploration, our look into the messy human reality of how this all works. We've seen the elegant code, the manic markets, and now the reconsolidation of power. We've discovered that any system that promises you freedom also hands you a new set of responsibilities. And are you truly prepared to handle them? But while these new puppet masters have been jostling for control of their new kingdom, the old ones have been watching. The emperors, the central bankers, the high priests of the old financial religion. They've watched this heretical movement grow from a joke to a curiosity to a genuine threat to their authority. And they are not about to let their story be overwritten without a fight. They are preparing to publish a new chapter of their own, a chapter that promises all the efficiency of digital money, with none of this messy, rebellious freedom. The empire is about to strike back. For a long time, the old empires, the governments, and their central banks watched this crypto rebellion from the ramparts of their marble castles. At first, they dismissed it. For the first few years, they treated Bitcoin like a weird nephew with a strange, incomprehensible hobby. Then, as the value soared and the movement gathered steam, their dismissal turned to nervous curiosity, then to outright alarm. They started to realize that the nephew might be about to inherit the family estate, and they weren't about to let that happen. They saw the power of this new technology, instantaneous, digital, borderless transactions, but they were horrified by its soul, its chaotic, leaderless, anti-authority spirit. So they did what all great empires do when faced with a revolutionary idea they cannot stamp out. They decided to co-opt it, to steal its fire, to create their own version hollowed out of its rebellious ideology and refitted to serve the interests of the state. The empire is striking back, not with armies and laws, at least not at first, but with a rival text, a rival story. They call it the Central Bank Digital Currency, or CBDC. It's Bitcoin in a government-issued suit and tie. A CBDC is the state's answer to the crypto heretics. It is a digital dollar, a digital euro, a digital yuan issued directly by the country's central bank. On the surface, it sounds convenient. Who wouldn't want a more efficient payment system? But you must understand this is not just a digital version of the cash in your pocket. It is a fundamentally different beast. It's the difference between a wild wolf and a domesticated dog. One is a force of nature that answers to no one. The other is a creature that, no matter how friendly, ultimately answers to a master. To see this new story being written, we must go to the place where the ink is already drying, to China. The development of their CBDC, the digital yuan or ECNY, is the grandest financial experiment of the 21st century. Let's imagine a young woman named Lin, who runs a small tea shop in the sprawling, futuristic city of Shenzhen. For her grandparents, every transaction was a dance of worn paper banknotes. For Lin's parents, it was the clack of plastic cards. For Lin, for the past decade, money has been a flash of light on a screen. The country has already become nearly cashless, not through a government decree, but through the sheer convenience of two private tech giants, Alibaba and Tencent. Their payment apps, Alipay and WeChat Pay, are everything. A QR code is the key to the entire kingdom. Lin is happy with this system. It's fast, it's easy, but the government in Beijing is not. They see that two private companies have become the gatekeepers of the nation's financial life. They own the data. They are the new puppet masters, and the state does not tolerate rival storytellers. So, they began to build the ECNY, a way to reclaim control. One day, Lin hears about a new government lottery. The prize isn't cash, it's a red envelope. A traditional gift, but this one is digital, delivered through a new app on her phone. It's an airdrop of 200 digital yuan, free money. She signs up, why not? And she wins. The money appears in her official state-run digital wallet. The government encourages her and millions of others to spend it at local businesses. She uses it to buy groceries. The transaction is seamless, faster even, than the private apps. It doesn't require an underlying bank account. It feels like magic. Over the next few months, the government pushes its adoption relentlessly. Civil servants start receiving part of their salary in ECNY. Public transport begins offering discounts if you pay with it. Slowly, deliberately, the state is weaving its new currency into the fabric of daily life. It's like the Trojan horse, but instead of soldiers, it's full of perfectly trackable currency, and you are the one pulling it joyfully through the gates. But Lin starts to notice subtle differences. Her transactions are not just with the merchant anymore. She has this faint, unshakable feeling that someone else is in the room. Every purchase, every cup of tea she sells, every trip on the subway is a direct data point flowing not to a private company, but back to the central bank, back to the state. Her financial life, which was once semi-private, is now an open book, and the chief librarian is the government itself. This is the fundamental trade-off. A CBDC represents the final erosion of the barrier between the citizen and the state in financial matters. With physical cash, you can buy a forbidden book, donate to a political cause the government dislikes, or pay a friend for a small job, and the transaction is anonymous. It leaves no trace. It is a small pocket of freedom. In a world of CBDCs, that pocket vanishes, and the level of control goes far beyond mere surveillance. We know that some CBDC models being tested have features that would make a novelist blush: programmability. Imagine the government issues stimulus payments during an economic downturn, but this new money comes with an expiration date. It's programmed to disappear from your wallet if you don't spend it within 30 days. You are no longer saving. You are being forced to consume to help the economy. Would you accept a free deposit of this money, knowing it came with such strings? Imagine your taxes being automatically deducted from every single transaction you make, in real time. Or your salary being paid in money that can only be spent on certain things: no junk food, no alcohol, no video games. It's the ultimate tool for social engineering, for nudging and coercing citizen behavior on a mass scale. It's the dream of the central planner. The motivations for this push are different around the world. In China, it is explicitly about control. Control over private tech, and control over the populace. In the West, the conversation is more defensive. The rise of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies has central bankers spooked. They fear losing their monopoly on money creation. They fear a private corporation, like Meta with its now defunct Libra project, could create a global currency that rivals the dollar. A CBDC, for them, is a defensive moat around the castle of sovereign monetary policy. But whatever the reason, the destination is largely the same: a future where every single financial transaction is digital, centralized, and monitored. And the psychological pull of this future is immense. It promises unparalleled convenience. No more bounced checks, no more waiting for payments to clear, instant disaster relief funds, a potential end to money laundering and tax evasion. The sales pitch is powerful. The state is offering you a perfectly efficient financial machine. The only price is a piece of your autonomy, a slice of your privacy. This is the great battle of narratives that is shaping our century. On one side, the crypto-anarchists, with their chaotic, decentralized, trust-the-code vision of freedom. On the other, the central planners, with their orderly, efficient, trust-the-state vision of control. It's the open, unruly internet versus a perfectly curated state-run intranet. And we, you and I, are standing right in the middle of this unfolding story. The emperor's new coin is not a fairy tale. It is being minted right now. But what is the true price of this perfect programmable money? What is the cost of living in a world where your money is no longer truly your own? So, the emperor is offering you a new coin. It's a perfect coin. It's efficient. It's secure. It's instantaneous. It promises a world without the messiness of our current financial system. But we left with a question hanging in the air between us, didn't we? What is the price of this perfect money? The price is not paid in interest rates or transaction fees. The price is paid in something far more valuable. The price is the quiet, anonymous spaces where freedom lives. To understand the danger, we need to look back. New technologies of control often arrive disguised as progress. Let me take you to Paris in 1789. The Bastille has fallen. The air is electric with revolution, with the promise of liberté, égalité, fraternité. The new revolutionary government faces a problem. It's broke. So, in a stroke of what they saw as rational genius, they confiscated all the lands of the church and issued a new kind of paper money, the assignat, with these lands as its backing. It was hailed as the money of the future. It wasn't tied to the decadent gold of the fallen monarchy. It was transparent, logical, backed by the solid earth of France itself. It was the people's money. Imagine you are a baker in the Marais district. At first, this new money is a marvel. But the government, embroiled in wars and internal power struggles, needs more, and more, and more. The printing presses in the Tuileries Palace run day and night. The promise of backing the money with land becomes a fiction. The value of your assignats plummets. The flour you need to buy costs 10 times what it did last month. You start asking your customers to pay with the old reliable silver coins, if they have any. Then the decree comes down from the Committee of Public Safety. The architects of the terror, you, the baker, are now legally obligated to accept the assignat at its face value. To refuse it, or to even suggest it is worth less than a silver coin, is to be an enemy of the revolution. Your neighbor, a butcher who was heard complaining about the worthless paper, was denounced and dragged before the tribunal. No one has seen him since. Now, men from the committee stand in your shop, watching. You sell a loaf of bread for the decreed price, accepting a pile of flimsy paper you know is nearly worthless, because the alternative is the guillotine. Your economic freedom is gone. Your financial decisions are no longer your own. They are dictated by the state, under penalty of death. The assignat, that symbol of revolutionary progress, has become a tool of absolute tyranny. It allowed the state to control the economy with a speed and brutality that was previously unimaginable. Now, take that story and put it on digital rails. A central bank digital currency is the assignat, with a supercomputer for a brain. It gives the state not just the power to issue money, but the power to control every single unit of it after it has been issued. Think about the social credit systems that are already a reality in places like China. Your score, an aggregate of your online behavior, your purchasing habits, and your social connections, determines your access to society. A low score can get you banned from buying a plane ticket or a fast train ticket. It can affect your children's ability to get into a good school. Now, imagine linking that score directly to a programmable CBDC. It's no longer a matter of simply banning you from a website. Your digital wallet itself could be programmed to reflect your social score. Your score drops because you bought a controversial book or associated with a known dissident. Perhaps your CBDC is now automatically blocked from purchasing non-essential luxury goods. Maybe your ability to travel more than 20 miles from your home is restricted by making your money unable to purchase fuel or tickets outside your designated zone. It's like your high school permanent record, but instead of keeping you out of college, it can keep you from buying cheese. This is the perfection of control, a turnkey totalitarianism. The infrastructure of oppression is built directly into the financial system, camouflaged as a network upgrade. All it takes is for a government, perhaps during a time of crisis, a pandemic, a war, or a period of civil unrest, to decide to turn the key. The state doesn't need to send soldiers to your door. They can just turn you off. They can freeze your funds, blacklist you from the economy, and render you a digital ghost, all with a few keystrokes. A CBDC is the state's way of saying, we trust you with this money, but just in case, we've installed a remote-controlled off switch. This creates a terrifying psychological shift in a society, a chilling effect. What happens to dissent when it becomes economically impossible? What happens to a free press when a government can instantly defund any journalist or publication that criticizes it? You don't even need to actively punish people. The mere knowledge that every transaction is being watched is enough. You start to self-censor. Maybe you don't donate to that environmental group because their activism is becoming inconvenient for the state. Maybe you don't buy that history book because its interpretation of events runs counter to the official narrative. You avoid any economic act that could be misinterpreted, that could lower your score, that could put a flag on your account. Freedom erodes not when it is seized, but when it is voluntarily surrendered out of a quiet, creeping fear. The argument that you don't need financial privacy because you have nothing to hide completely misses the point. It's like saying you don't need free speech because you have nothing controversial to say. The value of the right is in its existence, a shield for the day you might need it. What small, harmless transaction have you made recently with cash that you might think twice about if you knew a government official would be reviewing it? Buying a beer for a friend who is down on their luck? A ticket to a protest? A gift for a lover your family doesn't approve of? These small, private acts are the threads that make up the rich tapestry of a free life. A CBDC, in its most dystopian form, is a pair of scissors, threatening to snip them all, one by one, until all that remains are the approved official patterns. This isn't just about efficiency versus privacy. It's about creating a system that is robust against the worst impulses of those in power. The small frictions of our current world, the difficulty of surveillance, the hassle of seizing assets, the anonymity of cash, are not bugs. They are features. They are the buffers that protect the individual from the raw, absolute power of the state. The price of perfect programmable money is the potential for a perfect programmable prison. A cage whose bars are invisible, built not of steel, but of code. And it's a cage we are being asked to walk into willingly, lured by the promise of convenience. We've just walked through a chilling gallery of the future, a potential world of perfect, programmable control, brought to you by the Emperor's new coin, a cage with invisible bars. But for that cage to be truly effective, for the doors to lock behind us, one final thing must happen. The world outside the cage must be eliminated. The wilderness of financial freedom must be paved over. The first casualty in this war between centralized control and decentralized liberty, the first thing that must be hunted to extinction, is the crumpled banknote in your pocket and the handful of coins that jingle at the bottom of your bag. We are living through the last days of cash. And I think, before it vanishes, we ought to deliver a proper eulogy. We should remember what it is we're about to lose. The official story, the one told by the storytellers in government and finance, is that cash is a dirty, inefficient, outdated technology. It's a relic. It's the preferred tool of criminals, they say, of tax evaders and terrorists. And by digitizing everything, we can create a cleaner, safer, more transparent world. It's a compelling narrative. The argument that only criminals need cash is a powerful one. It's also as absurd as arguing that only criminals need locked doors. Privacy is not an admission of guilt. It is a prerequisite for freedom. And cash is a technology of privacy. Let me take you to another place, another time. To the United States in the 1850s. There are no digital ledgers here. There is only the brutality of slavery. And in the shadows, a network of quiet heroes is operating. Quakers, freed slaves, abolitionists. They call it the Underground Railroad. It is a network of dissent, a lifeline of freedom, and its currency is secrecy. Imagine a woman. Let's call her Martha, a conductor on this railroad. She is guiding a family of 4, a mother, a father, 2 small children north, towards the promise of Canada. They travel by night, sleeping in the hidden cellars of farmhouses by day. At every stage of the journey, money must change hands. A farmer must be paid for the food he provides, hiding it from his neighbors. A boatman must be paid to ferry them across a moonlit river, risking his life and liberty if he is caught. Martha pays them in cash. Heavy, untraceable silver dollars and worn, creased banknotes. Now, I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that they lived in a world with a central bank digital currency. Imagine every one of those transactions was digital. The farmer who accepts the payment is now flagged on a central ledger. The boatman's wallet now contains funds directly traceable to a known abolitionist. The entire network, this beautiful, fragile web of human courage, would be exposed with a single database query. Every node of resistance, every act of defiance, would be a digital breadcrumb leading the slave catchers directly to their door. The Underground Railroad would have been impossible. Cash was not incidental to this struggle. It was essential. Its anonymity, its permissionless nature, was the very thing that allowed good people to break an evil law. It was the currency of dissent. It was the fuel for a revolution of conscience. When was the last time you used cash for something that wasn't about hiding a crime, but simply about wanting a moment of uncomplicated privacy? This is what is at stake. The cashless society, for all its sleek convenience, is a world without whispers. It's a world where every financial conversation is held in the public square under the watchful eye of the mayor. It erases the small, necessary pockets of autonomy that allow for a truly free society. And who does this cashless cage harm the most? Not the wealthy, not the powerful. It harms the vulnerable, the homeless person who relies on cash donations, the refugee who arrives in a new country with no digital footprint or bank account, the elderly grandparent who finds the digital world confusing and alienating. The victim of domestic abuse who needs to secretly save a few dollars here and there to build an escape fund, a fund their abuser cannot see on a bank statement. Cash is the most inclusive financial platform ever created. It requires no smartphone, no bank account, no credit check. It just requires two people to agree on a price. To remove it is to erect a digital wall around the economy and to leave the most vulnerable outside. There is also a deep psychological price we pay. Spending cash feels real. You are physically handing over a representation of your labor. 5 crisp $20 bills feel like something substantial. Tapping a piece of plastic or a phone for that same $100 feels abstract, almost meaningless. That small moment of friction when you count out the bills is a moment of mindfulness. It's a psychological governor on our consumption. In the frictionless tap-to-pay world, we become detached from the meaning of the exchange. My bank account has become a work of abstract art. I know things happened, but the details are a mysterious blur of beeps and taps. During every major crisis, a hurricane, a blackout, a war, what is the one thing people rush to get? It isn't milk and bread. It's cash from an ATM. Demand for high-denomination banknotes skyrockets. It is a primal flight to a form of value that works offline, that doesn't depend on electricity or cell towers or a bank's servers being online. It is the ultimate insurance policy. A cashless society is a society that is radically fragile, one that is only a single power outage or a single cyber attack away from complete economic paralysis. We are being sold a story of progress. But what if the slow, messy, tangible nature of cash is not a bug, but a feature? What if it's like a handwritten letter in the age of email? It's inefficient, yes, but it carries a weight, a humanity, a privacy that the digital world, for all its wonders, has stripped away. This is the end of our third journey, our exploration of the great battle between the centralized state and the decentralized dream. We've seen the emperor's new coin. We've walked through the dark corridors of its potential, and now we are mourning its first victim. The end of cash is the end of a certain kind of freedom, a quiet and unassuming freedom that we will likely not appreciate until it is gone. And so we stand here, at the crossroads. Behind us, the long history of money, a story of trust in gods, kings, and neighbors. Before us, two paths diverge into the fog. One path leads to a world of state-controlled, perfectly efficient, programmable money. The other leads to a world of decentralized, chaotic, mathematically secured money. Which story will we choose to live in? And who gets to decide? And so here we are, at the end of our journey. You and I, back at the campfire. The flames are a little lower now, the shadows a little longer. We've traveled from ancient Egypt to the islands of the Pacific, from the tulip fields of Amsterdam to the digital forges of the blockchain. We have seen that money is not a thing, but a story, a shared belief, a magic trick we perform for each other every single day. And we find ourselves now in a moment that is both terrifying and exhilarating. We are living in a time when the old story is losing its power, and new ones are fighting to take its place. This isn't just about technology. It is a battle for the soul of money itself. It is a war of narratives. I think of the great library of Alexandria, the place I have called home for so many lifetimes. People imagine it was destroyed in a single catastrophic fire, a tragic accident. That's a simpler story, but the truth is more complicated and more instructive for us now. The library didn't die in a day. It died over centuries. It was a slow, creeping death by 1,000 cuts. Imagine it in its prime. It was not a silent, dusty archive. It was a chaotic, vibrant, living ecosystem of ideas. On one shelf, you had the cool, rational geometry of Euclid. Next to it, a scroll containing the mystical, hermetic texts of Egyptian priests. You had the star charts of Babylonian astronomers arguing with the philosophies of the Greek Stoics. It was a place that held all the competing stories of the world, side by side. It was an institution built on the radical idea that all knowledge was worth preserving, that all stories were worth hearing. But empires change, beliefs shift. A new, powerful story began to spread across the Roman world, a singular, monotheistic faith. This new story was powerful and compelling, but it was jealous. It did not want to sit on a shelf next to the old gods, the pagan philosophers, the heretics. It wanted to be the only story. So, a Christian mob burned the Serapeum, one of the library's daughter temples. Later, zealous patriarchs declared the pagan scrolls to be blasphemy. Funding was cut. Scholars were exiled. The scrolls were not just burned, they were neglected. They were allowed to crumble into dust because they no longer fit the dominant narrative. The library died because one story grew so powerful that it decided all the others were no longer worth telling. We are in a Library of Alexandria moment for money. On one shelf, we have the old scroll of government-issued fiat currency, with its comforting mantra, "In God we trust," still printed on the US dollar as a reminder that money has always been a story about faith in a higher power, in this case, the state. On another shelf, we have the new radical text of Bitcoin, a story about placing our faith not in any human authority, but in the cold, immutable power of mathematics. It's a story of sovereign individuals in a world without rulers. And now, a third manuscript is being furiously written, the CBDC. It's the state's attempt to co-opt the language of the new technology, but rewrite it to tell its old story of centralized control and top-down authority. It's a story of a perfectly ordered, efficient society, a walled garden protected by a benevolent keeper. These are not just competing technologies, they are competing philosophies. This is the choice before us. It's a choice between the walled garden and the wild, untamed jungle. The garden is safe, predictable, and easy to navigate. The food is provided for you. But the walls are high, and the gate is controlled by the gardener, who can change the rules or ask you to leave at any time. The jungle is chaotic, dangerous, and teeming with predators. But it is also a place of boundless freedom, of discovery, of true sovereignty. You are responsible for your own survival. Which environment are you built for? Your answer might come down to your own psychology. Where is your locus of control? Do you feel safer when a powerful external authority is in charge, protecting you from risk? Or do you feel a deep, primal need to be the master of your own fate, to accept the burdens of responsibility in exchange for the rewards of freedom? There is no right answer. It's a fundamental division in human temperament, and it's unlikely that one story will completely vanquish the others, at least not soon. The future will probably be messy, a hybrid. We may live in a world where we use a state-run CBDC for our daily taxes and utility bills, a decentralized cryptocurrency to save and transact across borders, and maybe even a corporate currency, a metadollar or an Amazon Prime buck, to operate within their vast digital ecosystems. We will have to become financially multilingual, navigating these different stories, these different systems of value every single day. So, what is my role in all this? I am the guardian of books. My only allegiance is to the story itself, to the preservation of choice. My fear is not that one system will win, but that we will forget that we even have a choice to make, that we will let the other scrolls crumble to dust without ever having read them, that we will sleepwalk into a prepackaged future, lured by the promise of convenience, without ever stopping to ask what we are giving up in return. Anyone who tells you they know exactly how this will end is either a time traveler or trying to sell you something. The future of money is unwritten. We are the ones writing it. With every transaction, every investment, every debate we have with our friends, every curious question we dare to ask. So, as you walk away from our fire tonight and back into your world of tapping cards and glowing screens, I want you to carry this with you. Money is the most powerful story we tell ourselves. It is the operating system of human cooperation. And for the first time in centuries, it is up for a rewrite. Ask yourself, which story do you believe in? The story of the benevolent state, the story of the sovereign individual, or some new tale that has yet to be told? And what are you willing to risk to live inside the pages of that book? The choice is yours, for now. And so the fire dwindles to embers. The night has grown deep and quiet around us. The great, sprawling stories of money of stone wheels and squirrel pelts, of digital ghosts, and emperor's coins now settle within you, not as answers, but as echoes, as questions. We did not come here seeking certainty. Certainty is the enemy of wisdom, the closing of a book that should always remain open. No, we came here for clarity, to see the architecture of the choices that lie before us. The journey through my library is not about memorizing facts and dates. It is about learning to recognize the shape of a story. It is about understanding that the battle for the future is always a battle of narratives. The tools change from the printing press to the blockchain, but the human heart, with its potent mixture of fear, greed, and hope, remains the constant. We are, and have always been, storytelling animals. We live and die by the tales we choose to believe. Do not feel overwhelmed by the complexity of it all. Feel empowered. You now possess a map of the territory, a lens through which to view the coming changes. When you hear of a new digital currency, you will not just see a ticker symbol on a screen. You will see a philosophical claim being made. You will see a story about power, about trust, about freedom. The library is vast, and the night is long. There are always more corridors to explore, more forbidden scrolls to unearth. But our time at this campfire is over. Carry the warmth of its embers with you. Keep the questions alive, for it is in the act of questioning, of refusing to accept any story as final, that the truest guardianship of knowledge resides. The future is an unwritten book. Be wary of those who claim to have already read the final chapter.